Howdy. So here's today's topic. Yeah, I have a friend of mine named Steve, and I actually did a video here with him. I interviewed him on the topic of coaching. Now, the thing about him is that he is a certified coach, and I think that's pretty cool. He went through all these courses, he got certification. Good for him. Now, one of the things that happens, at least for him, is that when he promotes himself a lot on different social media things, he likes to pretty much mention the thing that he's a certified coach. And that if you want to work with someone, you should probably work with a certified coach because they've gone through all this training and therefore they're, supposed to be better. And I'm not going to demean him for that because he's actually pretty good. I've never done coaching with him because I think we're a little bit too close of friends, but we talk a lot about a bunch of different concepts. Sometimes when we walk out the lake or we'll have lunch together in different things. So I'm not putting him down for that. What I am doing, however, is I'm going to ask this particular type of question. Just because you have a certain certification or just because you have certain type of education, do you think that that necessarily makes you better than someone else who may be doing the job? Let me tell you some secrets here. I have a bachelor's degree, but know what? I have no idea where my diploma is. Not a clue. It's nowhere in my house. It might be at Mom's house. I may have given it to her. I haven't seen that bad boy in a long time. But I got a degree. Know what I got a degree in? I got a degree in music, and I was 3 credits shy of the history part. Now, what do? I do healthcare finance, I do leadership, I do social media. What does either music or history have to do with that? Nothing. So, does that necessarily mean that because I have a degree, I'm better than anyone else for all these other things? No. Now, let's break this down even further. And by the way, I keep doing this because it's hot. I'm sorry, it's just hot. And so when I'm hot, I itch a little bit and I sweat a little bit. I've got the fan blowing on me, but it's hot. Just to get that out of the way. So you're not asking me, why is he doing this and why is he doing that and whatever. So anyway, so let's talk about my career, for instance. Medical billing. Let's start with medical billing. There are medical billing classes, but medical billing classes are mainly for physicians billing, and you don't get a true certification. Yeah, you get something that says you passed the class, but so what? That's not a certification. So until probably the last 7 or 8 years, there was no such thing as a true certification for medical billing. An organization I used to belong to created one so they could have some kind of certification. That same organization created a certification for medical billing directors. And there's another organization that has one called HFMA. But before then, there was no such thing. So when I was still an employee, there was no real certification for me to be able to take to say, hey, I'm certified. Plus, it wouldn't have meant anything anyhow because I was already doing pretty good. Charge master, which is a big part of what I do in healthcare. Until last year, there was no certification for charge master. There just was no such thing. There's no real classes you could go to. I mean, maybe someone says, well, I'll hold a all-day seminar and whatever, but there was no real certification. This is on-the-job training. So now that there is a certification, does that necessarily mean that those people are going to do better than me, who's been doing something with charge master for over 20 years, just because they got a certification? I don't think so. I really don't. So, you have to kind of take these things for granted. Staying on the healthcare thing, you have these people who are, chief financial officers, vice presidents of finance. Some of those people have CPAs, which sounds all big and fancy and whatever, except for the fact that you don't necessarily need a CPA to be a chief financial officer. Matter of fact, for some of those people, they get into healthcare and they have to totally relearn their jobs because a lot of things you learn in accounting don't apply in healthcare. I know that sounds strange, but it just doesn't. We have people who have degrees, healthcare management degrees. I know I'm saying that all wrong or whatever, but you get a certain degree. It's a master's level degree. Healthcare administration, that's it. It's a high level degree. In New York State, you have to have that in order to be a hospital administrator or a nursing home administrator. But you know what? There's a lot of those people who are horrible at it. They just, they show that they're book smart. They've been able to pass the thing, and then they get the jobs, and they just stink. Basically, in my opinion, and this isn't necessarily fair, but it's one of those kind of things where you learn a little bit of a lot of things, but you never really learn a lot. There are people who in other states have a lot more skill and a lot more knowledge, and yet they didn't have that requirement that they needed these particular types of things. So, you always have to ask yourself, just because someone has a certification or someone has a certain degree, does it necessarily mean that they know what they're talking about? How many of us know someone that we would probably call an educated fool? I'm just saying, there's nothing wrong with education. Matter of fact, I promote education all the time. I may not have gone back to get any other kind of degrees or anything like that, but I read stuff all the time. I read a lot of books about leadership and business, and obviously I have to keep up on my own profession of, the healthcare finance. And I read books on ethics, and I read histories, and I read biographies, and I read science fiction, and I'm reading stuff all day long. I love science. I love astronomy. I love reading about physics. I never took physics in school, but I love reading about quantum physics and nuclear physics. I love that stuff. And there's nothing that says that experience and the kind of reading that you do on your own isn't necessarily better than going to school and learning how to do something, or sitting in a bunch of classes to get some kind of certification so that you can go tell people, I got a certification. If you're hiring and you're looking for certain criteria for someone to reach so that it helps you to hire, I can see where that comes in. But you want to know the truth, quite often people are doing that to try to limit the number of things that come in because it makes it easier for them. But they end up hiring people who aren't the people they want. For instance, I have a friend of mine, she's been an accountant for over 30 years, but she doesn't have any kind of degree, but she's very good. And her problem is when she tried to leave the job that she had, no one would talk to her because she didn't even have an associate's degree. But she was good. She knew what she was doing. She had 30 years of experience. Come on. Are you telling me that someone who just got out of college with an accounting degree is better than someone with 30 years of experience in accounting? No. It just doesn't work that way. If there's certain technical things, sure. But, just to throw this out there, in New York State, if you're a teacher, you have 5 years to get a master's degree. And you have to get that master's education. If you don't, you can't be a real teacher. You can be a substitute teacher, but you can't be a real teacher. So basically, since every teacher has to have a master's degree, does that necessarily mean that they're all really educated and really good at what they do? Or does that basically say, okay, we just wore this whole thing out and it means absolutely nothing? In my opinion, it means absolutely nothing. If it's a requirement of the job and everybody's got to have it, then it means nothing. Now, that's my opinion. So let me just ask you guys, and like I said, I'm not diminishing the fact that someone goes back and gets certification so that they can be better at their jobs and can progress at their job, but do you necessarily believe that by having that certification, it makes you better than someone else? That's my question. How do you feel? Let me know. Y'all take care.